My name is Lauren Mitchell. I'm 34 years old. And the strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely sounds like betrayal when you first hear it. Sometimes it sounds reasonable. Sometimes it comes in a calm voice, late at night, asking for help, like it's the most natural thing in the world. 14 months ago, my life was steady. That's the word people used when they describe me. Steady, reliable, the kind of woman who showed up, who handled things, who didn't make messes. I was married to Daniel Mitchell, 6 years, 2 kids. Ava was 5, Lucas was 3. We had a house that always smelled faintly of laundry detergent and whatever I'd cooked the night before, toys under the couch, crayon drawings taped to the fridge, the kind of life that didn't look exciting from the outside, but felt safe from within. And safe matters more than people admit. Daniel used to say that about me. You make everything feel solid, he'd tell me, usually late at night when the house was quiet and the kids were finally asleep. Back then, I believed that was a good thing. Back then, I believed a lot of things. Daniel's best friend was Marcus. They'd known each other since college. 12 years of history. The kind of friendship that survives distance, bad decisions, and time. Marcus was married to a woman named Aisha. Aisha was kind, quiet in a way that made people underestimate her. She remembered birthdays, brought homemade food to every gathering, laughed at Marcus's terrible jokes like they were actually funny. She loved him. You could see it in the way she looked at him when he wasn't paying attention. And then there was Marcus's older brother, Ethan, 2 years older. Same face almost, same height, same easy smile. But where Marcus was steady, Ethan was unpredictable. Charming, yes. Magnetic even. The kind of man who walked into a room and shifted the energy without trying. But he was also chaos. The kind that makes you laugh, until it doesn't. Ethan was married too. His wife's name was Sophia. They had a little boy, Noah, who had just turned 2 at the time. So that was us. Me and Daniel, Marcus and Aisha, Ethan and Sophia. 3 couples, bound together by friendship, marriage, and blood. A system so interconnected, it felt unbreakable. It wasn't, because one night at 11 p.m., my phone rang. I remember the exact moment because Daniel was already asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his head, breathing slow and even. I almost didn't answer. Ethan never called me directly. We were friendly, sure, but not close. He was Daniel's friend's brother. That was the extent of it. So when his name lit up my screen, something in my chest tightened before I even picked up. Hello? There was a pause. Then his voice. Lauren, I need help. 3 words. Simple. But something in the way he said them made my stomach drop. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake Daniel, slipped out of bed, walked into the hallway, then into the bathroom, closing the door behind me. What happened? I asked. Another pause. And then, I messed up. Bad. My grip tightened on the phone. What did you do, Ethan? He exhaled like the air itself was heavy. I slept with Aisha. For a second, I didn't understand the sentence. It didn't process. Marcus's Aisha? I said, my voice sharper now. Yeah. The room felt smaller. You're telling me you slept with your brother's wife? Yeah. How many times? Silence. And then, it's been going on for 2 months. 2 months. Not a mistake. Not one bad night. 2 months of choices. 2 months of family dinners. Of sitting across from Marcus. Of shaking his hand. Laughing at his jokes. Knowing exactly what he was doing behind his back. I pressed my free hand against the sink, steadying myself. Why are you telling me this? I asked. That was the question that mattered. Out of everyone, why me? And then he said the sentence that would dismantle my life piece by piece. Because she's pregnant. Everything inside me went still. And it might be mine. The words didn't feel real. They felt like something from a movie. Something dramatic and distant and not mine. But they were mine now. Because he kept talking. I don't know what to do, Lauren. You're the only person I trust who isn't directly in the middle of this. There it was. The weight. The responsibility. The illusion of distance. You're not part of it, his voice implied. You're outside it. You can help without getting hurt. I should have known better. I should have done 5 things in that moment. I should have told him to tell Marcus immediately. I should have hung up the phone. I should have woken Daniel and told him everything. I should have refused to be involved. I should have chosen truth. Instead, I chose something else. Something quieter. Something easier. Something that felt, in that moment, like kindness. Okay, I said softly. A pause on the other end. And then, what do you need? 6 words. That's all it took. 6 words to step across a line I didn't even fully see yet. 6 words to turn myself from an outsider into part of the lie Ethan exhaled, relief flooding his voice. She has a doctor's appointment tomorrow to confirm everything. She can't go alone, it'll look suspicious. And she can't go with me. I already knew where this was going. You want me to cover for her, I said. Just tell Marcus she's with you. That she's helping you with something, if he asks. Just tell Marcus she's with you. Just a small lie. A harmless detail. A single sentence. That's how it starts. Not with something big. With something small enough to justify. I closed my eyes. In another room, my husband slept peacefully. In another house, a man I cared about, Marcus, had no idea his life was about to collapse. And I stood there, holding a phone, being asked to help hide the thing that would destroy him. I knew it was wrong. I felt it. That heavy, sinking feeling in my chest, like swallowing something that wouldn't go down. But I said it anyway. Okay, I'll handle it. And just like that, it began. The first lie. The first step into a story that was never supposed to be mine. And the worst part? At the time, I told myself I was helping. The next afternoon, I lied to Marcus for the first time. I can still hear how normal his voice sounded when he answered the phone. Hey, Lauren. Hey, I said, standing in my kitchen with one hand gripping the counter so hard my fingers hurt. Just so you know, Aisha's over here this afternoon. She said she'd help me sort some things for Ava's birthday. A beat. Then Marcus laughed softly. Man, thank you. She's better at that stuff than I am. I forced out a sound that might have passed for a laugh. Yeah, just didn't want you wondering where she was. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. That was what he said. My husband's best friend, thanking me for a lie that was covering his wife's pregnancy appointment with his own brother. After I hung up, I stood very still in the kitchen and felt something cold settle in the center of my chest. Not panic. Not yet. Something heavier than that. The first real shape of guilt. I told myself it was done now. One lie, one favor, one terrible afternoon, and then Ethan would figure out the rest on his own. He would tell Marcus. Aisha would come clean. The truth would break where it was supposed to break, and I would step back out of it before it stained me. That was the fantasy. Reality was uglier, because once someone knows you're willing to help, they stop asking carefully. They start assuming. 2 days later, Marcus called. While Daniel and I were cleaning up after dinner, the kids were in the living room, arguing over toy blocks with the kind of seriousness only small children can bring to nonsense. Daniel was rinsing dishes. I was drying them when my phone buzzed. Marcus. The sight of his name sent a sharp pulse through me. I stepped into the hallway before answering. Hey, he said. Random question. Has Ethan seemed off to you lately? There are moments in life when a person can still stop. Moments where the truth stands right in front of you, plain and reachable. That was one of them. I could have said yes. I could have said, Marcus, sit down. There's something you need to know. Instead, I leaned against the wall and stared at the family photo hanging there, Daniel holding Lucas on his shoulders, Ava grinning, me smiling into the sunlight like I belonged inside a life that made sense. And I lied again. No, I said, why? Marcus exhaled. I don't know. He's been distant, not returning calls, canceling plans, just acting weird. I closed my eyes. I knew exactly why Ethan was acting strange. Guilt had started eating through him from the inside. Being around Marcus meant looking at the damage in real time, and even men like Ethan eventually choke on their own reflection. But I said, he seemed normal last time I saw him. Marcus was quiet for a second. Then, maybe I'm overthinking it. Probably, I said. When the call ended, I stayed there in the hallway for a long time, listening to the sounds of my own house. Water running in the sink, Ava laughing, Lucas whining, Daniel humming under his breath. It struck me then how betrayal doesn't always arrive as a storm. Sometimes it slips into your home without making a sound. A week later, Ethan called again. This time there was no hesitation in his voice. I need you to hold something for me. My stomach dropped immediately. What? A phone. I went silent. A burner, he said. Just temporary. Sophia's been asking questions. I can't keep it in the house. I actually laughed then, but there was no humor in it. No. Lauren. No, Ethan. But he kept talking, fast and low and desperate. Please, just for a little while. I only need somewhere safe. Somewhere nobody would think to look. That sentence should have told me everything. Somewhere safe. As if my home, my children's home, should become storage for another family's collapse. I should have hung up. I should have said, do not ever ask me to bring this into my house. Instead, I let him come by that evening, after Daniel took the kids for ice cream. He parked at the curb like he was dropping off something ordinary. He handed me the phone wrapped in a grocery bag. I stared at it in my hand and felt disgust rise hot in my throat. It's just until I figure something out, he said. That phrase again. Figure something out. As if there were still a version of this story where no one got hurt. I didn't invite him inside. I didn't even step off the porch. I just nodded once, because by then I was too deep into the lie to pretend I was still clean. After he left, I took the phone into the garage and stood there looking around as if the room itself might tell me not to do what I was about to do. Tool shelves, paint cans, Daniel's extension cords, Ava's sidewalk chalk in a plastic bin near the wall. My ordinary life. And in the middle of it, me, with a secret phone in my hand. I locked it inside a metal toolbox behind old wrenches and spare batteries. Then I shut the lid and stood there, breathing hard, like I had buried something alive. That night, Daniel touched my shoulder while I was brushing my teeth and said, "You okay? You've seemed distracted lately." I met his eyes in the mirror, blue, open, trusting, and I said, "Work stress." He nodded immediately, no suspicion, no interrogation, just belief. That hurt more than doubt would have. Because trust makes lying feel uglier. Aisha called me for the first time 3 days after that. I remember the exact time because it was 10:17 p.m., and I had just gotten Lucas back to sleep after a nightmare. Her name on my screen felt wrong, out of place. I answered in a whisper. "Hello?" She was crying. Not softly, not delicately. The kind of crying that sounds like a person already falling. "Lauren," she said, voice shaking. I didn't know who else to call. I went downstairs, out into the dark kitchen, and sat at the table. "What happened?" "The test confirmed it," she whispered. "It's his." For a moment I said nothing, because even though I had already known this was possible, hearing her say it, hearing the certainty in her voice, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Real meant no fantasy left, no easy way out, no version where it all simply faded away. "I'm 11 weeks, she said. "I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how this became my life." That sentence should have made me angry. Instead, I felt tired, bone-deep tired, because I already understood something Aisha didn't want to say aloud. This became her life through choices. Repeated ones, deliberate ones, lonely or not, unhappy or not. She and Ethan had built this. But people in the middle of destruction rarely want clarity. They want comfort. And I gave it to her. She told me she loved Marcus. She told me Ethan had just been there. That Marcus had been working long hours. That she'd felt invisible. That one conversation became another, and then lines blurred, and it just happened. It just happened. That phrase. The phrase people reach for when they can't bear to say, "I chose this." I listened while my husband slept upstairs. I comforted the woman who was betraying one of the best men I knew. I told her to breathe. I told her she needed to think carefully. I told her it would be okay. And as the words left my mouth, I hated them. Not because I didn't mean them in the moment. I did. That was the most shameful part. I had begun slipping into a role I never should have accepted, the keeper of their fear, the witness to their panic, the quiet person in the middle making terrible things easier to carry. The lies kept multiplying after that. Not dramatic lies. Practical ones. Efficient ones. The kind that don't sound evil when you say them out loud. Marcus asked if Aisha was stressed because she'd seemed emotional lately. I said maybe she was just tired. Daniel asked why I kept stepping outside to take calls. I said a coworker was going through a mess and needed advice. Ethan texted once asking if I could delete a message he'd sent by accident to the wrong group thread. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone while doing it. By then I wasn't just lying. I was managing lies, tracking them, remembering who had heard what version and when. I had become a woman with a mental ledger of deceit running quietly in the background while I packed lunchboxes and folded towels and signed school forms. That was the strangest part of all. How normal life kept going. Ava still asked for help with her shoes. Lucas still wanted the same bedtime story every night. Daniel still kissed my forehead when he left for work. The grocery store still needed trips. The dishwasher still needed unloading. And beneath all of it, like a wire humming behind the walls, was this secret. Then came the ultrasound. Ethan called that morning. "I can't take her," he said. "Sophia's already suspicious. If I disappear for 2 hours, she'll know something's wrong." I stared out the window over the sink while he spoke. The backyard was bright with morning sun. Lucas's red ball was still lying near the fence from the day before. "Ask someone else," I said. "There is no one else." That wasn't true. There was Aisha. There was Ethan. There was the truth. But by then, they no longer spoke about truth like it existed. Only logistics. Only management. Only survival. So I picked her up at 1:15. Aisha got into my car wearing a beige sweater and oversized sunglasses, as if looking ordinary could hide the fact that her whole life was splitting open beneath her feet. For the first 10 minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt thick, accusing. Then quietly she said, "Do you hate me?" The question caught me off guard. I kept my eyes on the road. "No," I said. It was true. I didn't hate her. That would have been simpler. What I felt was more complicated than hatred and much less noble than compassion. I pitied her. I judged her. I resented her. I felt sorry for Marcus. I felt sorry for Sophia. I felt sorry for myself for being in that car at all. Mostly I felt trapped. At the clinic, I sat in the waiting room, flipping through an old magazine without seeing a single word on the page. Mothers with strollers passed by. A man in work boots held his partner's hand near the reception desk. A baby cried somewhere down the hall. Normal life. Everywhere, normal life. And there I was, waiting while my husband's best friend's brother's mistress, his own brother's wife, went in to see the image of the child that would destroy all of them. When Aisha came out, her eyes were red. She was holding a black and white printout in trembling fingers. For one suspended second, she looked almost happy. That was the worst part. Not because happiness was wrong exactly, but because it coexisted so cleanly with ruin. She sat down beside me and looked at the image. "It's real," she whispered. I turned toward her despite myself. A blurry shape, small, grainy, unmistakable. A baby. Something in my chest twisted hard. Marcus had wanted children for years. He used to linger near Daniel and our kids at barbecues, tossing a ball with Ava, letting Lucas climb into his lap, smiling with that quiet ache some people carry when they want a future that hasn't arrived yet. I remembered him once saying, almost absent-mindedly, "I think I'll be a really good dad." And there I was, sitting in a clinic beside his wife, looking at another man's baby. A baby made with his brother. Aisha gave a shaky laugh through tears. I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel. I swallowed and heard myself say, "It's okay to feel more than one thing." That line would haunt me later because it sounded wise, gentle, human. And maybe it was. But it was also one more way I made room for the unforgivable. On the drive back, I barely spoke. I dropped her off 2 streets away from her house so no one would see my car. When she got out, she leaned back in and said, "Thank you. I know I don't deserve this." No, I thought. You don't. But I only nodded. After she left, I sat alone behind the wheel for several minutes with the engine running. That was the moment I should have stopped. Not the first phone call, not even the burner phone. That waiting room, that photo, that drive back. That was the moment the universe placed the full truth in front of me and gave me one last chance to choose who I was going to be. I could have driven straight to Marcus. I could have told Daniel everything the second I got home. I could have dragged the truth into daylight before it rotted any further. Instead, I went home. I put the car in park. I walked inside. Daniel was helping Ava color at the table. Lucas was on the floor making dinosaur noises. Daniel looked up and smiled. "You're back." I smiled back and lied with my whole face. It didn't unravel the way I expected. There was no dramatic confession. No moment where someone broke down and told the truth because they couldn't carry it anymore. It ended because of a receipt. A small, forgettable thing. A piece of paper most people throw away without thinking. Ethan had taken Aisha to dinner. 45 minutes outside the city. Far enough, he thought, to be safe. Somewhere no one would recognize them. Somewhere distance would protect them from consequence. But he paid with his debit card because he'd left his cash somewhere else. Because he was careless. Because even people who think they're managing chaos eventually slip. Sophia found the receipt 2 days later. I didn't see it happen. I only know what came next. Ethan texted me at 6:12 p.m. 2 words. "It's out." I was sitting on the couch when the message came through. Ava was beside me, braiding a doll's hair with intense concentration. Lucas was asleep upstairs. The TV was on, but I couldn't tell you what was playing. I stared at the screen, those 2 words burning into my eyes. "It's out." It felt like something inside my chest dropped through the floor. I knew exactly what it meant. Not maybe. Not possibly. It meant everything. I set my phone down carefully, like it might explode in my hand. For a few seconds, the world stayed exactly the same. Ava hummed softly. The TV flickered. The house held its breath. And then my phone rang. Marcus. I didn't want to answer. I knew what waited on the other side of that call, but not answering would only delay it. So I picked up. "Hello?" He didn't say hello back. There was just breathing. Slow, heavy, controlled in a way that felt unnatural. 5 seconds. 10. And then, how long? 2 words. Flat. Empty. Terrifying. My throat went dry. "Marcus, how long have you known?" There it was. No confusion. No denial. Just the truth already sitting between us. I closed my eyes. 3 months, I said. The silence that followed was worse than anything he could have said. Because it wasn't shock. It wasn't rage. It was something quieter. Something breaking. 3 months, he repeated. I pressed my hand against my forehead. "Marcus, You knew," he said, cutting me off. His voice still calm, but now sharper. For 3 months, you knew my brother was sleeping with my wife, and you said nothing. Each word landed like a blow. You came to my house, he continued. You sat at my table. You watched games with me. You stood next to me at Ava's birthday party. I couldn't breathe. 3 months, he said again, and you looked me in the eye every single time and said nothing. I didn't know how to tell you, I said, the words sounding weak even to me. A hollow excuse. I was trying to figure out the right way. There is no right way, Lauren. His voice didn't rise. That was what made it worse. The right way was the first 5 minutes, he said. The right way was the night he told you. The right way was you picking up the phone and calling me before you had time to think about your own comfort. I felt something crack inside me. I was scared, I whispered. Of what? He asked. Of being uncomfortable? Of being the one who had to say it out loud? His breath hitched slightly. Or of choosing me over him? That question. That was the one I didn't have an answer for. Because the truth was ugly. I hadn't chosen Ethan because he deserved it. I had chosen him because it was easier. Because helping him meant I didn't have to be the person who detonated everything. Because silence felt safer than truth. You chose him, Marcus said quietly. You chose his secret over my life. The words landed heavier than anything else. My life. Not just his marriage. Not just his relationship. His life. Everything he thought was real. Everything he trusted. Everything he built. And I had stood there, smiling, nodding, participating in it, while it collapsed behind his back. I'm sorry, I said, but it sounded meaningless even as it left my mouth. He didn't respond. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then, a quiet exhale, and the last words he would ever say to me. I don't have a brother anymore. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, the silence in the room pressing in from all sides. Ava looked up at me. Mom? I blinked, forcing my face to soften. Yeah, baby? Why are you crying? I hadn't even realized I was. I wiped my cheeks quickly. I'm okay. But I wasn't. And somewhere deep down, I knew nothing would ever be okay again. Daniel found out that same night. Marcus called him. I wasn't there for that conversation, but I didn't need to be. I saw the aftermath. I walked into the house just after 9 p.m. The kids were gone. Their shoes weren't by the door. Their backpacks were missing. The house was too quiet. That kind of quiet only happens when something has already broken. Daniel was sitting at the kitchen table, hands folded, eyes red, still. He looked up when I walked in. Sit down, he said. His voice was calm, controlled. That scared me more than anger would have. I set my bag down slowly and sat across from him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, Marcus called me. My stomach twisted. He told me what Ethan did. A pause. He told me what Aisha did. Another pause. Longer this time. And then, he said, his voice tightening just slightly, he told me what you did. I opened my mouth, closed it again, because there was nothing to say that wasn't already too late. 3 months, Daniel said. Not a question. A statement. You've been lying to me for 3 months. I didn't know how to... He raised his hand slightly, not aggressive. Just enough to stop me. Don't, he said. His eyes locked onto mine. You're not confused, Lauren. You're not a child. You knew exactly what you were doing. Each word was precise. Measured. You kept a second phone in our garage, he continued. You drove Aisha to an ultrasound. You took late-night calls. You deleted messages. I felt exposed in a way I had never felt before. Stripped of every excuse. I asked you, he said quietly, more than once. I looked at you and asked if everything was okay. My throat tightened. And you lied. The word landed heavier than anything else. Not helped. Not protected. Lied. In our home, he said. Around our children. In our bed. I shook my head, tears spilling over. I was trying to protect. Who? He cut in. The question hit me like a slap. Who? Ethan. Aisha? Myself? Certainly not him. Certainly not Marcus. I didn't want to be the one to destroy everything, I said weakly. Daniel let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. So instead, you helped them do it slower? That sentence. It cut deeper than shouting ever could. Because it was true. I hadn't prevented anything. I had just extended it, made it cleaner, quieter, more controlled, until it exploded anyway. He leaned back slightly, studying me like he was seeing me for the first time. I don't think you cheated on me, he said after a moment. That should have felt like relief. It didn't. But what you did... He shook his head slowly. It might be worse. My chest tightened painfully. You proved something tonight, he continued. You proved that you can look at me every single day and lie without hesitation. I couldn't speak. If you can do that for someone else, he said, what's stopping you from doing it for yourself? There was no answer. Because trust doesn't break loudly. It breaks quietly, logically, like math. You showed me who you are, Daniel said, and I can't unsee it. The words settled into the space between us like something permanent, something irreversible. He stood up. I need space. I watched him walk away, every step echoing through a house that no longer felt like mine. That night, I slept in the guest room. Or at least, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. And for the first time since that phone call 14 months ago, I understood the full weight of what I had done. Not just the lies, not just the secret, but the choice. Over and over again. I had chosen wrong. The silence lasted 2 weeks. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful. Not the kind that gives you space to think. This was something colder, measured, intentional. Daniel didn't yell. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He simply removed himself. He slept in our bedroom. I stayed in the guest room. We spoke only when it involved the kids. Short sentences, functional, empty of anything that resembled us. Lucas needs his jacket. Ava has a school form. I'll pick them up at 5. That was it. No warmth, no anger, no softness. Just distance. And somehow that hurt more than if he had screamed at me. Because screaming means there's still emotion left to burn. Silence means something has already gone out. Marcus filed for divorce within a week. I heard it from someone else, not him. Not that I expected anything different. He moved out quietly. No confrontation, no scenes. Packed a bag, left the house, checked into a hotel, and then he disappeared. New city, new job, new life. He didn't fight for the house, didn't argue over furniture or savings or anything material. He just walked away, like everything tied to that life was contaminated. Aisha tried to reach him. Calls, texts, emails. She even showed up at the hotel once, I heard. He had the front desk block her. She sent letters. He returned them unopened. Eventually, she called me. I almost didn't answer. But some part of me, some stubborn, broken instinct, still felt responsible. Still felt like I had a role to play in this mess I helped create. Lauren, please, she said, her voice raw. Can you talk to him? Just tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I didn't mean for it to go this far. I closed my eyes. There it was again. That phrase. I didn't mean for it to go this far. As if the distance between intention and consequence somehow softened the outcome. Aisha, I said quietly. He won't talk to me either. There was a pause. Then soft, broken breathing. I lost everything, she whispered. I looked around my apartment. No, not my apartment yet. That came later. At that point, I was still in the house, still pretending something might be salvaged. You're not the only one, I said. It wasn't cruel. It was just true. I hung up after that. Not because I didn't feel for her, but because I had finally started to understand something important. There are some messes you don't get to fix. You only get to live with them. Ethan and Sophia were worse. Sophia didn't hesitate. She filed for divorce immediately. Took Noah and moved back to her parents' house. Ethan tried everything. Apologies, calls, showing up unannounced. But some damage closes doors permanently. Sophia's father answered the door once, I heard, and said 3 words. Leave, don't return. And Ethan did, because even he understood when something was beyond repair. The divorce dragged on. Custody battles, lawyers, money. 8 months of tearing apart what used to be a family. In the end, Sophia got primary custody. Ethan gets weekends. Every other Saturday, he picks up his son from a house he's no longer welcome in and drives him to an apartment that echoes with everything he lost. Aisha had the baby, a girl, Ethan's daughter. He's listed as the father. He pays support, sees her when he has Noah. So now, every other weekend, he's a father of 2 children. In a life that looks nothing like the one he used to have. Aisha raises her daughter alone. The woman who once remembered everyone's birthdays now forgets to eat some days, from what I've heard. The house she used to share with Marcus is gone. The life she had is gone. All that's left is responsibility and regret. And then there was me. Daniel didn't leave right away. That almost made it harder. Because for 2 weeks, I lived in this suspended state where something might still be possible. Where if I said the right thing, if I showed enough remorse, if I waited patiently enough, maybe he would come back. Maybe we would find a way through it. Then one night, after the kids were asleep, he asked me to sit down. Same table, same chairs, different people. I've been thinking, he said. His voice was calm, clear, resolved. I don't think you cheated on me. I nodded slowly, my chest tightening. But what you did, he paused. It broke something that I don't know how to fix. I felt the words before he finished them. I can't trust you the same way again. There it was. Simple, final, not dramatic, not loud, just truth. That's not anger, he added. That's logic. Logic, like a calculation, like something that couldn't be argued with or undone. You showed me what you're capable of, he said, and I can't unsee it. My hands were shaking. I'll do anything, I whispered. Therapy, time, whatever it takes. He shook his head gently. That's the problem, he said. I don't know if anything fixes this. And in that moment, I knew. 2 weeks later, he filed. Now, I live in a small apartment on the other side of the city. I see Ava and Lucas 3 days a week. They don't understand. Not really. Ava asked me last week, "Did you do something bad?" I swallowed hard and said, "Yeah, baby, I did." She thought about that, then asked, "Did you say sorry?" "I did." She nodded slowly. "Then why can't you come home?" I looked at her, this small, innocent person who still believed apologies fixed things, and I said the only truth I had left. Because sometimes sorry isn't enough. She didn't fully understand. I hope she doesn't. Not for a long time. I wrote Marcus once, a long email, explaining everything. Not excusing it, just telling the truth. Why I did it, how I justified it, how wrong I was. I told him I think about it every day, that I would give anything to go back to that night, to that phone call, and say something different. Tell Ethan no. Call Marcus immediately. Be the person I should have been. He never responded. I don't know if he read it. I don't know if he ever will. And honestly, I don't deserve a response. You don't get to ask forgiveness from someone you helped destroy. I don't talk to Ethan anymore either. After everything came out, I called him once. "You ruined my life," I said. There was a long pause. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," he said. I actually laughed. A hollow, empty sound. "You asked me to help you hide a pregnancy from your brother," I said. "What exactly did you think was going to happen?" He didn't answer, because there was no answer. There never was. I'm 34 years old, living in an apartment I can barely afford, paying for a house I don't live in, seeing my children part-time, carrying the weight of something I can't undo. People ask me sometimes, "Why didn't you just tell Marcus?" Like it was simple, like saying those words would have been easy. It wasn't. It would have been the hardest conversation of my life, and I was too afraid to have it. Too afraid of the fallout. Too afraid of being the one who lit the match. So instead, I held the bomb and waited and told myself I was helping until it exploded anyway. My therapist asked me something recently. "If Ethan called you tomorrow with the same situation," she said, "what would you do?" I didn't hesitate. I'd call Marcus before I hung up. She nodded. "Why?" I thought about it for a long time. Then I said, "Because loyalty isn't protecting someone's secret. It's telling the truth to the person who deserves it, even when it costs you everything." That's what I know now. Too late. A marriage too late. A friendship too late. A life too late. If you ever get that call, late at night, from someone asking you to lie, to cover for them, to protect a secret that isn't yours, don't do what I did. Don't confuse silence with loyalty. Because silence doesn't protect people. It destroys them. And sometimes, it destroys you too.